Bubba, what you cooking, man?
Good morning, everybody. How we doing this morning, Mr. Klingensmith?
Man, I am just psyched to be here. Kicking off this
Let's
Tuesday with my first run in several weeks.
let's go.
Feeling
We love to
good.
see it. And we got a special guest today for everybody joining on here, Mr. Drew himself. What's going on, brother?
What's going on? Good morning. Happy Tuesday. How you guys doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm out here moving a little bit quicker than a walk. Got the vest on. We're pretty locked in. I had a great weekend, high volume weekend, um, building up back for Ironman Texas. And then, but yeah, I can't complain about the weekend. Weather's finally getting better in Central Texas. It's pretty warm. It's supposed to be windy today. It's not right now. The wind's going to pick up. I know for anybody watching, just know that through I-35 in Central Texas, there's a red flag warning. So high risk of wildfires and gusts up to 55 miles per hour today. So if you're driving or if you know of anybody moving through I-35, it's going to be pretty dangerous. But Drew, introduce yourself. What's the story, brother?
Yep. So I am Drew Reitz. I am 24 years old and I'm officially 1 year into logistics with Upwell. And so going back to college, I played 2 years of junior college baseball in Hutchinson, Kansas, middle of nowhere. And attitude and effort, something you pick up there, and integrity. It's a small town. And so that carried over with me to the University of Nebraska, Omaha, where I finished up my playing career, 2 more years of college baseball. And then after that, was kind of unsure what I wanted to do, decided to go get my MBA. And in the process of that, I met a very nice fellow by the name of Charlie Dahoney on Facebook Marketplace. Kind of thought he was a truck driver, to be honest with you. And fast forward to where I'm at now, working with Upwell, and we're doing some AR AP automation and logistics, and kept up with the fitness from college baseball. And Michael, you were one of the first people that I heard speak at the Broker Carrier Summit last year in Kansas City, and what you had to say blew me away. And so I'm thankful to be here, and man, it's full circle. I love working out and meeting you guys. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome, man. Well, now you get to be the only other place where if you fail 7 out of 10 times, you can be an all-star.
That's how it goes, man.
That's about right. By the way, I got a text from Pedro. He is dealing with the inclement weather and has opted to go to the gym. So he is going to try to join us, but will probably be late. But I appreciate his efforts for getting out there.
Yeah, he must be getting some. I know. I was looking at the radar. He's north of me. He's in Killeen, and I know that the way the band is moving across Texas, he might be getting some thunder and lightning. But it's.
Well,
I'm a firm believer. What's that?
You froze for a sec.
Oh yes, I was saying the weather might be hitting Killeen pretty well, but I want to talk about how great it is to have Drew on the show. I'm a firm believer in domino effects, and we've talked about it a little bit on the show about how sometimes our actions, we sometimes think our actions go unseen. Was in like we never know if there's something that's going to happen due to our actions or who's really watching or anything like that. But when you talk about domino effects, like if you think about how kind of like my story, because if I don't write the story the way I did, which got me to places like Broker Carrier Summit to speak at that event, again, if I don't put in that work, Drew doesn't see the things I say, and maybe he doesn't have this sort of inclination or passion of kind of locking in, and he could get like many people do in their careers. I think a lot of people do get swept up by their career, wanting to succeed at that, and then their health and wellness ends up taking a kind of a back seat. Whereas one of Drew's first impressions to the industry was seeing me talk, and I'm not stroking my own ego, but imagine, quantify that now, where people's first impression in the industry is seeing the presentation I gave at Broker Carrier Summit. Maybe people from an education piece, maybe their work, maybe their views on how they go after their job are a little bit different. And I kind of like hearing that.
Absolutely. That was like I said, I was brand new to that conference, and I didn't know a whole lot about what it meant to have a broker or carrier in that relationship. And so once I saw you on stage, Michael, and you were talking about health and wellness, I understand that piece. So I like this guy already. Plus with Dr. Mark Manera speaking and hanging around there, that it was just perfect.
You bring up a point, and I think about the everybody's doing it syndrome, because what you're exposed to initially is the bias that you take. And if you're on a brokerage floor somewhere and you're just surrounded by all the bad habits that can consume people, we get the impression of like everyone's doing it. I guess that's the way the industry is. I mean, if you spend enough time on LinkedIn, people joke, hey, yeah, I'm a broker. I got an hour and a half of sleep and I'm on all this caffeine and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have to be that way. It's just the observation bias.
Absolutely.
And so maybe we can observe some healthier habits and people doing different things, get part of a different circle.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a mindset thing. Speaking of, Pedro, because I wanted to bring this up on his post, because I think that falls in line, because it's funny how this lesson keeps getting retaught over and over again about how it really is the mind that holds people back. And, there was somebody who had commented on one of Pedro's posts about, him going for, Pedro had gone for a nice 5K, walk by himself, getting out there. He had a fantastic week in front of him. And there was somebody who had commented on his post, kind of congratulating him for what he does, saying if it was and they had said, if it was me, I would die. The only walking I get is going to, is essentially walking around Walmart or doing chores around the house. And that right there is a mentality. Like I would die if I had to go do that. It's untrue, but it's just what people think from being out of practice for it for however long. And to think that you get enough movement in your chores, I mean, unless those chores are like strenuously hard
Unless
labor.
it's your full-time job and you're getting 25,000 steps a day doing it.
Yeah, then unfortunately it isn't enough. And I mean, and within the comment, they also had mentioned that, they smoke cigarettes, use tobacco, and so regularly. So again, that's all things I used to say. I mean, I smoked cigarettes for nearly 9 years. And the thought of running or doing X amount of distance, especially after getting on the Marines, was definitely out of reach. Like the ideas of any sort of endurance event, I thought was impossible. You were born, you were lucky with it. And again, those are all mindset things. Whatever we're telling ourselves when we look at events, whether it be Ironman or a marathon, if you're saying, "Oh, I could never do that," couldn't be less true.
I think when I first started getting into Spartan racing, even then I said I would never do a marathon, and I've run 6. 3 weeks ago, I said I would never run an Ironman, and I'm signed up for Belgrade. The progression, right? Oh, I would die if I did that. I never want to do that. Do the first thing that sucks. Do the one step that sucks. Then we conquer it. And then the 5K walk is no big deal. Then the 5K run becomes the next task. Then it becomes the 10K. Then it becomes the marathon. We can just keep redefining ourselves and defying all these limiting beliefs, because our default position is comfort. We always seek that. We always try to talk ourselves out of shit. It only takes that one step in that each direction to actually make a change.
Nick and Michael, I got a question for you guys. So, Michael, obviously your background in trucking, and Nick, you said you never run a marathon. What was that process like, taking it day by day? How did you kind of expand from 1 mile to 26.2 to an Ironman? What was that like for you guys?
You want to go first, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a progression of how it worked, like the stage of events going from reading David Goggins' first book to then physically running while I was on the road, and it kind of it was a win each day type of mentality of just looking at how much time I had. So if I knew and kind of having that schedule planned out, so being behind the wheel of the truck, knowing exactly when I put myself in the sleeper berth, knowing how long I was going to be in the sleeper berth, whether it was just 10 hours or a little bit longer, depending on whatever the time frame I was on. So if I knew that I was going to be off duty for say 12 hours, I would say I'm going to jog or work out for 1 hour. And I would go out there, and it really didn't matter how far I went, but I knew I would be going out for an X number of time. That's why I tell anybody getting interested in running, if you want to do it, don't worry about the distance you go, just focus on time.
That was a game changer.
Yeah, that'll kind of change your mentality, because focusing on just distance, you're gonna end up getting caught in comparison. And so eventually over time, more miles got covered in the time I was allotting for running, and I was able to go on anywhere from 3 to 6 mile runs, during my workout times when I wasn't driving. And so I was like, well, if I could do 6 miles off the bat, what can I do when I go home? And then within just a few months, and then also you do start to experience kind of a rush of endorphins when it comes to running that, you can call it the runner's high or whatever. Didn't know really that at first, but eventually you start feeling like at a certain point, distances that felt long or hard no longer feel as hard or long. So you want to go one more, quite literally. Like you're saying, I'll just do one more. And I would almost make the deal non-negotiable, where when I really didn't want to, I would just say, I just need to do 3 miles. That's all I need to do. All I need to do is 3. So once I get to a mile and a half, I know I can turn around and go back. But most of the time, probably 80 to 90% of the time, I would get to a mile and a half and I'd say, I'll just get to 2, and then I'll make it 4 miles because I felt good. And then eventually it would turn into a little bit more. And I think that progressive overload of running and building endurance onto it led to that point of the mind opening up, realizing, okay, I can go for some of these challenges. I can go to some of these events. Why wouldn't I?
It's a good way to put it. I like that.
Mine started very different. I needed a big, powerful why first, and the first thing that happened was the Boston Marathon bombing. I'm from Massachusetts. I've been in the marathon a dozen times before that. I grew up there, and I was mad, and I didn't know what to do. And so I figured the way I can punch back is say, fuck it, I'm going to run that marathon then. The second thing that happened is about 6 months after I started obstacle course racing, I was in a bad car accident. Got several herniated discs, nerve damage, completely derailed me. And I'm like a rebellious teenager. And so I basically threw a glorified temper tantrum and was like, oh, fuck it, then I'm going to run the Boston Marathon. And so, I mean, if you're going to go big, is it go big or go home? I had to find a way to get in. I had to find a way to raise money for charity to get in. 122 people donated to my cause, including ex-girlfriends, like people who I fired. So I'm carrying like a lot of support with me. And my first marathon was the worst weather conditions in the history of the Boston Marathon. It was 18 degrees and sleeting the entire freaking time, 40-mile-an-hour headwinds, torrential downpours, and I'm dressed for a run in Florida. But I'll be honest, it was the best way it could have been for me because it took my mind off the run and more on the experience. And honestly, like, other than the fact that I couldn't feel my fingers, it was the most incredible experience of my life. I mean, there's almost 1 million people out there standing in torrential downpour, cheering you on. And so I wanted more. The training, though, is just like Michael said, it's the reason I never wanted to do a marathon is because I only saw mile 26. You know, I could only see mile 18 or mile 20. I could think about the dehydration and the exhaustion. And when I at that point, I'd never run more than 10 or 12 miles, it seemed like impossible to me. But you don't wake up on day one and go run a marathon. You run for 45 minutes. You know, I run by time. And so the consistency. And all of a sudden I ran 18 miles. 2 weeks later, I ran 22. And I'm like, holy shit, when did this happen? It happens as your body begins to adapt. You are capable of so much more than we allow ourselves to believe. And I think a marathon is a great way to prove that.
The marathon, the 26.2 is like the perfect place for really anybody to start. And the reason why they should start there and not so much, and this is something Goggins has said, where if you're training for a half marathon, you might as well train for a full, because the amount of time you're putting in for a half marathon, it's essentially going to be the same time you need for a full race. That's how it works. There's no point in because the thing is, while you train for a marathon, you should run a half marathon.
That was actually that was part of my training. Was I signed up for a half marathon when it came time to run that distance.
Yeah. So instead of selling yourself short by saying I'm only going to do this, go the extra mile, because once you run the half marathon, you're going to say in your mind, just like everybody. I've had a bunch of people over these last few months. They ran the Austin International Half Marathon, and then they ran the half marathon in Austin again in February. A whole bunch of people, members at Orange Theory, friends of mine, have all ran their first half, and already they're saying, I want to go for the back half. Like, they're already there. So they were already there before the race. They were already there. But once they felt like what the payoff was with the 13.1, then all of a sudden they're telling themselves, when all they needed to do was tell themselves that they could do it the day before the race and train for the full, knowing full well they've already logged that half marathon as training and prepping themselves for what the next challenge of endurance running could be. So instead of just saying, I'm going to commit to a half, commit to the full marathon mentally. Say, I'm going to do this, whether it means getting it on the calendar or simply telling yourself every day that's what you're training for, and sign up for those half marathon races and just put it as part of the training. And because you've got to, when it comes to anything, and this is why 26.2 is the perfect distance, when it comes to you have to get, no matter what, you have to get that first race under your belt. You have to go through the mud before you can get better at these things. The same thing in the business world, same thing when it comes to your job, same things when it comes to, so much applies. You have to go through the mud, but I'm sure, Drew, you can relate to this. Training for baseball, being on a baseball team is not all that fun. Like, going to practice isn't fun. Like, people who play sports, the most fun part of the sport is playing the game. It's game day. It's the meet. It's the trials. It's when you can go and out there and perform. That's the fun part. And that's only this much of the actual game. The really crappy part is when you have to go to practice and you have to work out and you have to go through and you have to make the mistakes. That is the training is where you're going through the mud. Game day is the reward. That's the fun part.
You know, I'll give a good as you bring up baseball, it's batting practice, bro. It's the taking the ground balls before the game. It's practicing the bunt. It's taking the reps, because I was thinking about this as you were talking about it. If you want to run a marathon, get a plan. That's the other X factor, is people don't know how to do it, so they don't do it. Like, get a plan. It's about the training. It's about getting those reps in and doing the repetition to build those muscles, to build that endurance, and to build the mindset.
Everything you guys are saying with training for this marathon is what I'm correlating it to baseball. Something that we used to do is just keep everything pitch by pitch.
Yes.
And just showing up and stacking days on days. During that process, it feels like it's nothing. But you look at a span from 1 to 4 years, from when you're a freshman all the way until your senior year of college, and you look at the improvement and how much you've grown mentally and physically, all those days that you stacked on one by one, they add up, and it's a huge difference in the long run.
How many games in a college year?
58 regular season, and then a few postseason, depending on how good your team is.
I mean, yeah, even 58 games, right? Like 58 times where you show up to compete. That's a lot, right? And if you're looking at game one, thinking how you want to perform in game 58, you're going to be disappointed.
We always said that the lineup changes from the first game of the year all the way till 58. It could be two entirely different lineups. So it's a wild game for sure. And like you guys are saying, you just got to keep headstrong and taking it day by day.
I think Michael's he's back. or frozen again. He talks about stacking wins all the time. And, one of the times, and I talk about consistency being an incredible weapon. And the first time I really saw it wasn't my first marathon. It was actually my 6th marathon when I was training for Berlin because I had broken my rib 90 days before it. And so I couldn't do anything except run. And I mean, even that was like touch and go. But I remember there was a 3.5 hour or like a 3 hour run that I did consistently. And it was like 3 out of 4 Saturdays was the exact same run. And just over the course of the month, doing the exact same thing, I ran like 1.2 miles more in the 3rd session of it than I did in the 1st. And remember, I run by time and heart rate. So that doesn't mean I worked harder. It just means I got better. I got faster. And there was nothing remarkable I did, but I just kept getting the reps in.
Wow. How'd you break your rib?
In a Spartan race, I was doing an obstacle called the box, which is like it's kind of what it sounds like. It's an 8-foot tall wall with a rounded edge, so there's no like nothing to grip onto on the top, but there's a rope tethered over the side. And the way that I take that obstacle, at least the way that I used to take that obstacle, was how I would climb a rope like a J-hook, but there's not a lot of slack. And so you're sort of twisting and pulling and turning. And as I was twisting and pulling one way, it just went popped. That was mile 3 of an 8-mile race. I came in dead fucking last, but I finished the race.
That's all that matters is finishing it. I love that.
Yeah, I'll tell you, baseball and golf are really 2 sports that really test mental endurance. Because with especially when you look at Major League Baseball, there's 162 games. It is.
Yeah, something like that.
You saw something around there, and there's no such thing as a perfect record in baseball season. People don't do that. We had the Miami Dolphins in the NFL. The Patriots who had ended up losing to the Giants in the Super Bowl. They had a good regular season. We've had NFL teams with perfect quote regular seasons, but in baseball it doesn't happen, and in golf it doesn't happen either. Nobody in golf wins every major in an entire year. It's not how it works. And there are 2 sports that, I mean, whether you do them, especially for golf, that's why I think golf is a healthy hobby for anybody out there. It's because it's a total mental game. It's the entire reason behind baseball and golf quite literally is learning from your mistakes. It's all based on imperfection. There's no such thing as perfection in baseball and golf. It's entirely built off of how well can you train your mind to get back up and do it better the next time, over and over again, and then fail again and get back up and do it the next time. And I think it gets discounted a lot, especially when you look at Major League Baseball and you see how many teams there are and how many people that is who are pitching home runs. We talk about the guys who hit the home runs a lot in baseball. How about the pitchers who throw those pitches? Do they just quit as soon as somebody hits a home run? They just walk off the mound and say, I guess I'm never going to make it. I guess that's it. Baseball career's done. No, they're back in the mental lab figuring out.
And they plunk the guy they plunk the guy next. They get right back after it, right?
That's just the way it goes.
Guy down after him.
I hear you, Michael and Nick. I don't know. That's just how things go. And I think baseball and what you're saying there, that rejection and all the failure, it translates to life. For me specifically, it's been the sales role. So when I call somebody and they hang up on me, like, hey, it's no different than me letting a ball go between my legs at second base. On to the next one. Let's pick it up and keep back going. Let's go.
Drew, you'll appreciate this, I think, anyways. I want to relate baseball to sales, something that I talk about in training all the time. Manny Ramirez, one of the most prolific hitters of his generation. Love him or hate him, all right? But one of the reasons that he was so good, and I don't know if this stat is still true anymore, but I heard it once, is that he saw more pitches per at-bat than any other player in the history of the game. Like, that he fouled off more pitches. He made you pitch to his spot. And so I talk about that in terms of sales, getting the most out of your at-bat, not just walking away because we get that rejection. Is there one more piece of information we can get, one more question we can get? Is there something that just maximizes our ability at the plate?
Absolutely. I like that.
So let's kind of go into it. Drew, you're at Upwell. You seem highly motivated within the industry. What's let's talk a little bit. Let's talk a little bit Upwell. I mean, you're highly motivated, passionate about what you do. You had a great first impression into the industry. What are you working on? What are you working on at Upwell? What's in the future plans for you guys over there?
Yep. So I am the sales development rep there, and so this has been my start to the industry. And so Upwell does accounts payable and accounts receivable automation for brokers and carriers, logistics companies. And so it's been a great start there because what I've had to understand is that logistics is a cash flow business. Carriers want to be paid on this day. Shippers don't want to pay you until this day. And so understanding that importance on why it's so crucial to get paid on time has been a tremendous start. And so right now we've grown. When I started, I was employee 6 or 7. Right now we're at 27. So just raised 6.5 million. Shout out Charlie Dahoney. Love him, love what he's doing. And so we're a fast growing team, and we're on a mission to conquer all of the headaches in accounting throughout this industry. And as you guys are familiar, there's a lot of them. So,
Dude, I love that. And one of the things I talk about all the time, that even when capacity is at its worst and everybody hates the market, this industry continues to explode. And that's another, we talk the spin-offs, right? The things that were once just a service component of the industry are practically an industry by itself. And I love how you said that. This is a cash flow business.
I'm not going to lie. Some of the best little phrases and pieces of information you kind of get from somebody else. And so I was on a discovery call with, forget who it is, a couple weeks ago. And that's what he said. And I'm like, thinking a couple hours later that night, just letting my thoughts ponder. And I'm like, it is a cash flowing business. A lot of people say that. And the more I think about it and do the math and how this industry runs, it is a cash flowing business.
That's where a lot of new agents and, new, I'm going to say startups and people want to start their own brokerage, like, oh, because they can get all these customers and carriers and blah, blah. They don't think about that component.
Nope.
That's a huge, I was always a W-2, and I was always working for somebody else and leading teams. So I knew of those things, but it wasn't my problem. You know what I mean?
It's a good problem not to have.
I mean, I guess it was, put it this way, actually, it was a problem, but I wasn't aware of it. So
Yep.
I would think that it's actually a more prevalent thing to discuss, because even unless you're in a big box brokerage and you're really not, I guess, able to do a lot of things that aren't already kind of pre-scripted for you,
Yep.
then understanding how those things work. Because one of the things that my old boss used to teach me is, like, if it's a cash flow issue, that means it's, like there's value in paying somebody faster or getting paid, or allowing them to pay you slower or something like that. So, I mean, those are all things. Good morning, Jessica. By the way, Cleary, if you're still on there, good morning. Morning, Shimmy.
Good morning,
Dude.
Jessica.
Do you guys hear this wind by chance? Am I screwing up the sound?
No, you're good. I saw you cover it when that car went by, but it's not that choppy.
Look at my hair, dude. Dude, this is like, it just turned up in here. It's like Twister outside. It is freaking breezy.
Jessica's comment there?
Yeah, the wind is howling. I'm talking like, if I was to try to lean, just a minute ago, if I was to try to lean back, the wind would have probably held me up.
Damn.
I saw that, Michael.
Well, at least the way back would be nice.
Yeah, the wind is to my back right now. But my God, yeah, it's gonna be a blustery day here in Austin.
What's up, John? Man, John's, just to bring it back to what we talked about at the beginning, John's another example, and like, of people who saw you doing awesome, decided to, make changes to their lives. And when he talks about it, he probably doesn't realize that he's actually helping other people too. Like the people that you don't even, that you don't recognize, that you don't know. I put out those videos almost every day, little motivational clips and blurbs. And I mean, they get a few likes here and there, but not a tremendous amount of traction. And yet I'm at the Spartan race on Saturday, and a stranger walks right up to me and says, I love your videos. Thank you for doing that. I have no idea who you are. It's good to know that there are people out there and that you are helping people, even if you don't.
Nick, I think you're your LinkedIn page and your book speaks for itself. It was our first time meeting, and I mean, came across your page a few months ago, and so I've known about you since then and followed up and kept in check with what's going on in your life. And so I think just your story in general is motivation and great for us all. So
Thank you.
sorry.
Yeah,
about
Nick, that consistency is king. I know it stinks because there's a lot of people who I see it a lot too in the fitness community, especially here in Austin. You know, there's certain people who are kind of living a lifestyle like I would love to be, of like how they live as a sponsored athlete. And I look at their story and I'm like, and many of them are very, very similar. It's people who played D1 sports and they ended up getting into, and they got into some finance career or something. And then, they ended up like becoming a personal trainer, and now they're like this person. I don't know. There's nothing interesting about the story. Again, they're actual, like, are they good people? Yes, but like their story doesn't. It's like, okay, great. Like you were a D1 athlete and you just continued working in sports, like in athletics. Like I don't know. I don't see anything that really. And now but they have a good market. I understand that there are a lot of people who play college sports who probably do feel disenfranchised after school is over. So it's like, I'm not upset that that's like, you know, they bet on themselves and they've won, but it's like, you know, their content's not going to inspire me. I think that there are more people who are out there suffering with just lack of confidence and anxiety on, you know, what they think they can achieve. And that's kind of like who I'm catering to. And when you don't see it pick up the same way you see it pick up, it can kind of be a little bit defeating. But again, it's just a game. You just got to keep hammering it. There's hail coming down right now.
Jesus.
This is So this is an excuse. Iron Minds podcast is an excuse destroyer. So whatever you're doing, there is literally hail coming down. Hit my phone. You can't see it, but it's hail. I got to get back. I got to get to the pull-up bar.
Nick and Michael, quick question for you guys. So as Michael and you were kind of talking there about taking that first step, you know, motivation, student athletes, D1 baseball players, D1 football players, they have that fitness background already. And so their story might not be as extravagant. What's the biggest thing for someone to take their first step and to start their journey fitness-wise? Would you guys say?
Put on a pair of shoes and go outside. I mean it. It's that simple. Don't overcomplicate this shit. Right now, if you're listening, if that's you right now, pick up a pair of shoes. I don't care which ones. We're not going on a marathon. Walk your happy ass outside and walk for 10 minutes or run for 5 minutes. Do something more than you're currently doing, but take the first step. The thing I need is I need a date on the calendar. I need something to train for. I need a big goal, something that's going to force me to make uncomfortable changes. But for someone who just wants to literally make fitness part of their life again, just the first step is just doing something active.
I like that.
Yeah. Sorry, my phone's in my pocket because I'm running home and I don't want it to get super wet. But yeah, when it comes to getting started, like with me, I just joined a gym that I knew was going to be challenging. Happened to be a CrossFit gym. It's group fitness. I didn't have to think about the workout. I didn't have to plan anything. I just went. There's a coach there who owns the gym. He's passionate about what he does. We ended up, and I showed a bit of interest in wanting to better myself, and he took that on. And we became friends. But yeah, just starting, like getting outside for that walk, like getting outside for the 60-minute walk. That's it right there. There is no, you know, again, I've been talking about this a lot in Orange Theory as we end our transformation challenge. The ideas of commitment and consistency are very boring. They're boring because you don't get the outcome right away. Unlike now, you can get Amazon Prime in 24 hours. You can solve problems overnight. We have all this AI, but you cannot get the outcomes you want when it comes to fitness consistency and commitment. It's boring because it's the outcome that takes over our minds. But really, you just need to focus on what you want to become.
Yes. Absolutely. You can get in the gym. You're halfway there. You're the hard part. There, you might as well do the workout. So get in the gym. It's the hardest part.
Hopefully you guys were able to hear that.
The thing this morning, or maybe it was Michael. Maybe it was just now. Like, just drive to the gym, go inside, or somebody was talking about commit to reading. If you want to commit to reading, just say to read one word. Sit down and open the book and read one word. Are you not going to read this? Are you not going to read the whole first sentence at least?
Yep.
You know, take that. Just, this is what I work on with people. Is I call it breaking it down to the wildly specific and stupidly simple action steps. And I mean, make it so silly that you actually feel stupid writing it down.
I like that. Wow. I'm gonna take that for myself, Nick.
It works for me all the time. Literally, if there's a tough phone call I want to make and I don't really, that I can feel myself resisting it, I'll write down the steps. And step 1 is find the phone number. Step 2 is schedule the 5 minutes to make the call, or step 3 is dial the fucking phone. But I mean, when I write it down like that, there's nowhere for me to think. There's no step that says, hey, let's ponder this for 20 more minutes. It just says do it.
Mm-hmm. Michael, we can still hear you.
Perfect. I mean,
A while ago, we can still hear you. So you're good.
finally made it to the pull-up bar.
I think we're about on the home stretch here, yeah?
Yeah.
Or we're gonna watch you break the pull-up record right now.
No, I won't do that. But Drew, what do you got in the calendar?
For the day or for the workout?
Just in general. For the day. No, just for the future. You got anything you're training for? You got anything you're getting after?
Man, you guys are really putting me in my place. So my older brother, he's a year older than me. He's training for a half marathon coming up in a couple of weeks. And so I'm starting to think ahead as you guys are talking more about Spartan races, CrossFit, half marathons, full marathons, Ironmans.
Where are you at, Drew?
Where am I at? I'm in Omaha, Nebraska.
All right, there's absolutely no Spartan races there, but we'll find something.
I've never done any of those before, but I have wanted something for me to step out of my comfort zone.
The 5 minutes I've known you, I have a feeling this would be like something you would probably say. You would be like me, man. You jumped the finish line that day, especially because like when I got into it, I was 2 years sober, out of shape, like whatever, you know. You're not that far away from your athletic days that this might be a natural transition where you're like, oh, all right, I can do this. I like this. I'm going to get back after it.
I mean, I look forward to the day I have something to train for, physical wise, fitness wise. And so, yeah, getting a pump in the gym is great and I love it. And it's one of the best parts of my day. But like you're saying, I want to cross the finish line and just say, hey, I did that. Check it off the list.
That's about it, man. And then you know, as soon as you do that, you're like, I want more. It starts with something small.
I saw the medals on your wall earlier, so it sounds like you've done quite a few of them.
I finished Spartan number 108 and 109 this weekend. Like I said, 6 major marathons and maybe 100 other obstacle course and Sufferfest, and 200 and wait for it. Hold on. 201 days. We're going to get that Ironman medal up there.
That's what I'm talking about.
You're talking to Spartan somewhere. Yeah, you should do it. I know that there's one in Austin soon. But
yeah,
you know,
hey, I've done that one too. It's actually a fast course. I liked it out there.
I like it.
yeah, it's a good one. Drew, I think it's great that you came on the show because there's a lot of, I mean, where I'm very driver focused, there's a lot of people who have been commenting in general over the past few months about, you know, the people in the industry who drive the desks. And what's great, I was actually at the Texas State Capitol last week, and I got to meet the drivers, a couple of the drivers who they drove the white Volvo that I took a picture in front of the Texas State Capitol with. And those guys are truck drivers, like, and they do that job where they get to drive that truck to events, to every now and then, like one of the guys I was talking to drives for Walmart, and it's a pretty good gig. Like Walmart lets him goes and does this thing, and he was saying, his insight, and he's an older guy, old school guy, must be in his 50s, 60s. He was talking about how, he likes being a driver. That's where he likes being. He likes to stay in his own lane. That's what he enjoys the most. But what loves the most about doing that job when he gets to drive that truck is when he gets to see the work of other people in the industry. And he complimented, he goes, you guys going to the Capitol, he's like seeing the motor carriers go to the Capitol and speak on this stuff. And I go to these events, whether it be Mid-America Truck Show or any of these other trade shows where they meet companies kind of like Upwell and people on that side on the brokerage space. And he sees when he sees their passion and how much those people care, it's really important. So and he doesn't discount the fact that there are other people in the industry working just as hard in their own ways. I still think being the job of a driver is a little bit more rigorous and dangerous, but he talks about how they work hard. And I think that gets slept on. That's why I talk about the mission is changing the health and culture of fitness in the entire trucking industry, because people are getting caught up in their day-to-day life. They want to succeed. There are problems every day. There are fires that need to be put out, and all of that is working against your best interests, which will lead to chronic disease, stroke, heart disease, because with the high stress job, that stress does not go, that rent gets due. That rent gets due. It takes a toll on your heart. And there's a time when that toll gets paid. And if you're not doing the right things about it, then you could run amok. So I think it's really great for a guy like you to come on the show and talk about that.
Well, thank you. I'm speechless there. There's no better way to say what you just said. I have no words for that. You said it perfectly.
That's what he does. Gents, I'm going to have to hit it. It's about that time for me. So, Drew, thanks for coming on. Awesome.
Drew. Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to leave us with some parting words, where can the people find you?
You can find me at LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, Drew Reitz. Email is drew.reitz@upwell.com. You can go to upwell.com, fill out a website form, ask for Drew. I'm around LinkedIn, trying to grow the page, and I'll be at a few conferences coming up in April. I'll be at the Broker Carrier Summit in Indianapolis, and then TIA, wherever that is. I've done
Drew, what's a good referral look like for you? What's your ideal customer?
Oh man, a nice broker on a few of the most popular TMSs that are using some of the payment portals like Cass and US Bank. Some headaches there, because that's what Upwell can solve for you. So,
well, you heard him. If you want to talk fitness, baseball, or the cash flow, what do we call it? Cash flow industry.
Cash flowing industry.
That's right. Hit that man up.
Well, sweet. Thank you guys for having me on. Nick, great to finally meet you. Michael, good to see you again. And man, this has been a blast so far. What's up, Casey?
Nice. Well, gents, I'm going to hit it, but iron sharpens iron, go team.
Let's go. Get after it today. It's Tuesday. Make it happen.